Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Raul Melendez, and this is Public Finance and Budgeting. Today, I will be presenting on City of Beaumont, California's budget, fiscal year 2024-2025. Here is the overview. City of Beaumont's California budget format, type of budget information provided and identified to determine which budget they utilize, some advantages and disadvantages of the budget format, and my recommendations for change in budget format or to remain with current format. So the City of Beaumont's fiscal year begins each July 1st and concludes on June 30th. Here's a quick budget process overview, budget development, preliminary budget, proposed budget, which is a proposal stage where city manager submits proposed budget to city council to review during a budget workshop. The next phase being the revision stage where city council holds a public meeting to review and adopt the proposed budget, finalizing with the enactment stage. City council approves final budget. So the city of Beaumont utilizes a program budget format. The total budgets is broken down into 7 fund groups depending on the revenue source, but it also provides describing purpose of service. So, for example, general fund. It mentions this fund supports most city staff and departments except for transit and wastewater. Also, there is the Capital Projects Fund, um, which I'll be discussing a little bit more on other further down slides. Capital Improvement Plan. So, again, just a quick overview. Fiscal year 2025 budget process. Departments continue the budget on a program basis, where each department applies costs to individual programs, which were then rolled up to the department's overall budget. Budget goals, make prudent use of public resources. And then here's the 5-year capital improvement plan that I was discussing, fiscal year 2025, fiscal year 2029. The city also has a 5-year capital improvement plan that lists anticipated capital projects for fiscal year 2025 through fiscal year 2029, which is a total of 62.9 million. And it pretty much is displayed by category: planning, parks, vehicles, equipment, infrastructure, circulation, facilities. So here for this assignment, we were assigned to locate 3 peer review journals. So for my first one that I found was an analysis of introduction program budgeting in local government by Clovers, 2001. Um, and program budgeting is really focusing what is being accomplished. So the advantages mentioned in this article was that it pretty much fosters transparency and accountability. It improves decision making and resource allocation, such as being able to identify those that are programs that are being underperformed or under unperforming programs. The disadvantages of program budgeting identified in the article is difficult defining and measuring program outcomes, being making it difficult to show the true measurements or quantifying a program on its success. And then another disadvantage is high initial cost. Tracking a specific program and implementing the program itself can cause resistance, as the traditional line item budget has been the format. So that's a disadvantage of the resistance in this article. The second academic peer review journal uh, is introducing the new program, pragmatic program budgeting, overcoming design obstacles to planning, management, and control. So I was able to find this table, which pretty much gave compare and contrast pros and cons between traditional administrative unit and line item and the program budgeting. And you'll be able to locate that in page 20. So for the traditional administrative unit line item, chief characteristics, appropriate funds units, and provide control. Points related to items of expenditure, usually spending unit and economic types of categories. Why I preferred this approach: strong orientation, control, alignment, accountability between administrative unit and use of funds. And then common barriers to success: lack of flexibility when relative prices or requirements for resources change, compromising production efficiency. or budget becomes separate from policy performance, which leads to budgeting being a marginal gain with undue focus on feeding the administrative unit's cost structure. And then for the program budgeting, uh, two characteristics: appropriation of funds, programs that are organized based on objectives, which may or may not relate directly to spending units. Why prefer this approach? Strong orientation to the public's purpose rather than the control purpose, with accountability related to programs rather than administrative units. So focusing on the outcome, not necessarily on the program itself, not necessarily what is being spent. Separating the common barrier, separation of steering through programs or rowing through administrative units, leading to complexities and rigidityness in executive execution that compromises the original intent of program budgeting, and arguably results in the worst both worlds: excessive control but compromised performance orientation. Third, excuse me. The third academic peer review journal that I was able to locate was the zero based budgeting and critical analysis. I wanted to bring up more information on other types of formats to be able to answer my last question, which is what recommendations would I make? So I know that we've discussed um, line item budget formats, performance budget formats, also with program based format. And so I just wanted to learn a little bit more about zero based budgeting. And so the advantage of zero based budgeting is that it provides opportunity for rigorous and continuous critical review of activities or operations where managers need to justify all spending, not just the increment required to continue, or making room for better identification of waste funds. It allows for proper resource allocation, identifying highest priorities, regardless if it's an old program or new. And that really stood out to me because eh, it allows you to evaluate, to really determine, do we even does this program even is even worth it to continue, or it's just really uh, a waste. So the disadvantages identified in this article is zero based budgeting is time consuming. It could be a high workload during the initial, especially during the initial implementation phase, as the organization must commit to extensive time and personnel to do these assignments and or analysis. Uh, the second disadvantage is resistance of implementation due to the possibility of eliminating low priority programs. So um, I guess it's with the incrementalism or in increments budget format, it allows programs to continue regardless of. But here, there's uh, a chance to really dissect and see if it's really worth continuing with the program. So, budget format recommendation. My recommendation strategy is to sustain for the city of Beaumont is to sustain the existing program budgeting format and support the use of traditional administrative line item control to ensure clear accountability. In addition, I also recommend the integration of performance budgeting metrics to introduce a more profound justification process. So, allowing the city to regularly assess program efficiency or efficacy, eliminate waste, and ensure proactive alignment of expenditures with measurable results. Lastly, regarding zero based budgeting, I deemed it to be fiscally inefficient and inappropriate given the stringent administrative timelines and excessive labor demands of a standard municipal fiscal year, simply because of how quick the fiscal year or the process in itself, it, it's going to take a long time. So I really don't think that the zero based budgeting, although it might allow you to assess a program from the ground up, but I don't think it's appropriate. And here are my references. Thank you so much. That concludes my presentation.